Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I start by associating myself with the remarks the Prime Minister just made about Michael Meacher? And on behalf of the Labour Party, his constituents and a much wider community, our condolences to his family. I spoke to them last night and asked them how they would like Michael to be remembered. So they thought about it and sent me a very nice message, which, if I may, Mr. Speaker, I'll read out. It's quite brief, but it's very poignant. And this is what they said as memories of Michael. When I was young, one of the things he frequently said to me was that people went into politics because they had principles and wanted to change things to make the world better, but that in order to get into power, they would often compromise on their principles, and that this could happen again and again until, if they eventually did get into power, they would have become so compromised that they would do nothing with it. Those of us that knew Michael knew him as a decent, hard-working, passionate and profound man. He represented his constituency with diligence and distinction for 45 years. He was a brilliant Environment Minister, as the Prime Minister has pointed out. He was totally committed to parliamentary democracy and at this Parliament holding government, all governments, to account. And he was a lifelong campaigner against injustice and poverty. We remember Michael for all of those things. We express our condolences. We express our sympathies to his family at this very difficult time. His will be a hard act to follow, but we'll do our best. Mr. Speaker, following the events in the other place on Monday evening and the rather belated acceptance from the Prime Minister of the result there, can he now guarantee to the House and to the wider country that nobody will be worse off next year as a result of cuts to working tax credits?
What I can guarantee is that we remain committed to the vision of a high-pay, low-tax, lower welfare economy. And we believe the way to make sure that everyone is better off is keep growing our economy, keep inflation low, keep cutting people's taxes and introduce the national living wage. As for our changes, the Chancellor will set them out in the autumn statement.
Jeremy Corbyn.
I thank the Prime Minister for that, but the question I was asking was quite simply this. Will he confirm right now that tax credit cuts will not make anyone worse off in April next year?
Prime Minister.
What we want is for people to be better off because we're cutting their taxes and increasing their pay. But he's going to have to be a little patient because although these changes passed the House of Commons 5 times with ever-enlarging majorities, we will set out our new proposals in the autumn statement and he'll be able to study them.
Jeremy Corbyn.
Mr. Speaker, this is the time when we ask questions to the Prime Minister on behalf of the people of this country. Thank you. Mr. Speaker, if I may continue. People are very worried about what's going to happen to them next April. So what exactly does the Prime Minister mean? He's considering it. There's an autumn statement coming up. But we thought he was committed to not cutting tax credits. Is he going to cut tax credits or not? Are people going to be worse off or not in April next year? He must know the answer.
I'll make 2 points. First of all, we set out in our election manifesto we were going to find £12 billion of savings on welfare. And this is...
Order, there's too much noise in the chamber. Order! A bit of calm. The questions must be heard and the answers must be heard. The Prime Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And it's an important point because, of course, every penny we don't save on welfare is savings we have to find in the education budget or in the policing budget or in the health budget. The second point that I would make is because of what's happened in the other place, of course we should have a debate about how to reform welfare and how to reduce the cost of welfare. Now, I'm happy to have that debate, but of course it is difficult to have that debate with the honourable gentleman because he has opposed every single welfare change that's been made. He doesn't support the welfare cap. He doesn't support the cap on housing benefit. He doesn't think that any change to welfare is worthwhile. And I have to say, if we want a strong economy and we want growth and we want to get rid of our deficit and we want to secure our country, we need to reform welfare.
What we're talking about are tax credits for people in work. The Prime Minister knows that, he understands that. He's lost the support of many people in this country that are actually quite sympathetic to his political project. Some of the newspapers who support him have now come out against him on this. He did commit to 12 billion cuts in the welfare budget, but repeatedly refused to say whether tax credits were going to be part of this. In fact, he said they weren't. Can he now give us the answer we're trying to get today?
Answer the question.
The answer will be set out in the autumn statement when we set out our proposals. But I have to say to him, it has come to quite a strange set of events when you have the House of Commons voting for something 5 times, when there is absolutely no rebellion amongst Conservative members of Parliament or indeed amongst Conservative peers, and the Labour Party is left defending and depending on unelected peers in the House of Lords. We've got, in British politics, we've got a new alliance, the unelected and the unelectable.
Mr. Speaker, it's very interesting that the Prime Minister still refuses to answer the fundamental question. This is not a constitutional crisis. This is a crisis for 3 million families in this country, for 3 million families who are very worried about what's going to happen next April. Just before the last election, the former Chief Whip, now Justice Secretary, said in answer to a question on the BBC World at 1, "Are you going to cut tax credits?" The answer was, "We are not going to cut them." Why did he say that?
What I said in the election is that the basic level of child tax credits would stay the same, and at £2,780 per child, it stays exactly the same. But the point is this: if we want to get our deficit down, if we want to secure our economy, if we want to keep on with secure growth, we need to make savings in welfare. Now, if he, even with his deficit-denying, borrow forever plan, presumably he has to make some savings in public spending. If you don't save any money on welfare, you end up cutting the NHS. You end up cutting even more deeply policing budgets. Those are the truths. When is he going to stop his deficit denial, get off the fence and tell us what he'd do?
Mr. Speaker, a
moment ago that the answers needed to be heard, the questions need to be heard. The Right Honourable Gentleman is going to ask his question. It will be heard. If it takes longer, so be it. Jeremy Corbyn.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I've 5 times asked the Prime Minister today whether or not people will be worse off if they receive working tax credits next April. He's still not been able to answer me or indeed many others. Can I put to him a question I was sent by... Mr. Speaker, it might be very amusing to members opposite, but I was sent this question by Karen, and I quote, "Why is the Prime Minister punishing working families? I work full-time and earn the living wage within the public sector. The tax credit cuts will push me and my family into hardship. Can he give a cast-iron guarantee to Karen and all the other families who are very worried what is going to happen next April to their income, how they're going to make ends meet? He could give them the answer today. I hope he will. I ask him for the 6th time, please give us an answer to a very straightforward, very simple question.
what I'd say to Karen is this: if she is on the living wage, working in the public sector, next year, in April, she will benefit from being able to earn £11,000 before she pays any income tax at all. Right. It was around £6,000 when I became Prime Minister. If she has children, she will benefit from 30 hours of childcare every week. That is something that has happened under this government. But above all, she will benefit because we've got a growing economy, because we've got zero inflation, because we've got 2 million more people in work, because we're going to train 3 million apprentices in this Parliament. And that is the fact. The reason the Labour Party lost the last election is they were completely untrusted on the deficit, on debt and on a stable economy. And since then, the deficit deniers have taken over the Labour Party. That is what happened. And when you look at their plans, borrowing forever, printing money, hiking up taxes, it is working people like Karen that would pay the price.